cursed? This is a serious question that I'm asking, because I am just having the worst luck. If you watched a video that I released a bit ago, I was talking about 2 disappointing adult fantasy romance series that I read that had 2 great books and a bad book. I read the Holly Black series, and I had to do an unpopular opinion video about that because that didn't go well. I should say up front that the book series that I'm about to talk about is in no way as annoying to me as those books, but because the final book was once again disappointing in some way, I'm rating it maybe a little bit harsher than it deserves. So today I'm not talking about a trilogy, I'm talking about a duology, because I thought, oh well, maybe I'll switch it up, and it's the trilogy thing that's not working for me. Duologies are also really difficult for me, and I know that, but I did it anyway. So I finally finished Hafsah Faizal's The Sands of Arawiya duology. The first book is We Hunt the Flame, and the second book is We Free the Stars. I read We Hunt the Flame quite a bit ago and was very, very excited for the second book, which came out more recently. And so for this review, I reread We Hunt the Flame and then finished We Free the Stars. Because this is a series review, there will be spoilers for We Hunt the Flame, because it's really, really hard to talk about We Free the Stars without talking about the ending of We Hunt the Flame. But we'll start with We Hunt the Flame in general. This book, I think I gave it 4 or 4.5 stars the first time I read it, and that rating really, really held up for me. This book is about a girl who lives in a village covered in ice and snow and surrounded on one side by this dead magical forest. It's that kind of spooky forest that you know immediately when it shows up in a horror movie. You don't go in there or you die. Zafira, however, is unlike anyone else in her village. She can go into this forest and come back out alive, or really come back out at all. People normally who go in there, they don't come back, or they come back crazy. She can go in there, hunt, and bring food back for her village. So she does that because many of the people there are struggling, her family is struggling, but of course she has to dress up as a man to do it because this is not a woman's world, and she would get in a lot of trouble if she were found out to be a girl. So the people of her village know that there is a mysterious hunter who comes and brings food and other things out of this forest called the R's, and they're like, oh yay, a man come to save us, not realizing that it is in fact a woman. She has a best friend named Dean, as well as his sister Yasmin. She has a sister and a mother who has essentially just been in her room for the past year or so after her husband / Zafira's father went into the R's when Zafira was sick because they needed the food that she would otherwise be providing and did not come out right. And Zafira's mom actually had to murder him. So, yikes. The other main character in this book is Nasir. He is ostensibly the prince of this nation. There are 5 caliphates underneath the rule of one king, and he is the king's son, crown prince, but his father is a terrible person and has trained his son to be an assassin. So while he's supposed to be a courtly prince, he is in fact feared by the entire country for being the Prince of Death, and he goes out on assassination missions for his father. Yikes again. One of the other main characters from Nasir's side of the story is Altair. Altair is a general in the king's army who is literally the most positive and like poppy like soldier you ever did see, and that's important later. I've talked about Altair a little bit in the Heather's tag Michaela and I did because he's just a cinnamon bun. He's great. At the beginning of We Hunt the Flame, Zafira and Nasir are not at all in the same geographical place, and they do not know each other. And the story weaves back and forth between them as something weird is happening with the R's, and there is this island where there is a special quest item that if they can retrieve it, they can bring magic back to this kingdom, which has not had magic in a very long period of time. And so Zafira, with her magical abilities that allow her to navigate the R's, is like the only person who can find this magical item, and the king wants her dead. So Zafira goes off on this quest, and the king sends Nasir after her to kill her. Yikes. The opening of this book is great. There's action, there's world building, you get introduced to the main characters in a way that you are actually introduced to more characters than you realize, but it doesn't feel clunky, it doesn't feel overblown. It's just like, okay, now we meet this person, and this is natural, and now we're here, and now we're here, and it just all fits together really well. And especially the way that some of these characters weave across both Nasir and Zafira's stories. There was a possibility in the short period of time that is this opening before the quest really starts that would feel very heavy, and it doesn't. So with that under the belt, I was like, I'm so excited for the rest of this book. And then Zafira goes off to Shar, which is this island nation where the questy item is. So Dean goes with her because he is in love with her and he wants Zafira to marry him. And I'm still unclear whether or not Zafira really loved Dean, but she definitely liked him. And, you know, I think there was at one point she was like, I would have married you if I had stayed, but she doesn't actually feel that way about him. And Altair goes off with Nasir after Zafira. So the four of them are all off on this journey together, even though they don't realize it. Right when the four of them hit Shar, they are attacked by Ifrit, which are these shape-changing evil creatures. Evil. This comes out later. Maybe they're not so evil. But they're attacked by these creatures, and long and short of it is that Dean dies. However, Dean does not die because of an Ifrit. Dean dies because of Altair. Altair accidentally shoots him because apparently, despite being a general, Altair can't fire an arrow. This is where the issues start with this book, because Dean's death in this moment and then afterward does not feel natural. Death doesn't often feel natural, but like Dean is there and then Dean is dead and then it moves on, and then his death is kind of used in a variety of ways to either create roadblocks or like it comes up at weird times, but it often feels like Dean's entire purpose was to die. It's not that his death isn't important to the plot, it's that it just is so clear that he was only introduced to die. And even from reading, I think, the jacket, knowing that Zafira and Nasir would be the two main characters, he was just introduced to die. And that's annoying to me because it's just so telegraphed from go and then clearly used as a prop and not like an emotional thing throughout the rest of the series. That's just, I don't know. It was just weird. And I was like, okay, he's dead. I don't really feel anything because I'm still waiting for this plot to start. So after Dean dies, again, the plot ramps up a little bit more. There are more people who join their quest. And of course, Nasir, Zafira, Altair, and the rest of everybody realize that they need to work together against a common enemy to get the questy item. Not really shocking that the plot went that way, but you know what? I have talked about this before. I love a good quest fantasy. And outside of Dean's death, and I think this is why this sticks out to me so far, the plot of We Hunt the Flame flows. Like, it's, you know, these characters are introduced and they're here, and while it seems kind of funny at the beginning, there is this overarching underlying plot that has been set up by one of these characters to arrange to have all these characters meet at this specific point, to get to this specific place, to set up towards this specific goal, and it's slowly revealed to you over the course of the novel. And it is the kind of slow reveal building quest fantasy that I adore. I love it. And then plus the world building, the characters, every character in they call it the Zumra, their family, has their own personality. There's character building happening most of them have character development as this goes along. And it was so good. And then some more reveals are made. I was like, it started off kind of clunky. There was this thing that I didn't like, but clearly this book knows how to flow. So the beginning was forgiven. I wouldn't say the ending is unrealistic, because I think in a way the ending actually makes more sense than it doesn't. So there is a final battle with the big bad, the Lion of the Night, who is revealed to have also taken control of Nasir's father's body. He's you think the big bad is someone else, and then you realize it's this guy. And again, totally earned, wonderful, great character who gets even more complicated in the second book. Love a complicated villain. But there's this battle, and it doesn't go well for them. They need 5 hearts to restore magic. The hearts were removed from these very powerful female witches who, when they imprisoned the Lion of the Night Anshar, and by returning their hearts back to each of the 5 caliphates, magic will be returned. It doesn't go well, and they end up losing one of the hearts, and then they lose Altair. And because Altair is a cinnamon bun, too good for this world, I'm mad. I'm mad because they get on the ship, leaving Shar, and they're like, where's Altair? And I'm like, not one of you noticed that Altair wasn't there anywhere? And honestly, in the uncoordinated retreat, one of the members of their Zumra dies. It's not shocking necessarily that as you're running for your life, you would, in trusting Altair to follow, not really look for him, because he also always seems to really have his stuff together. But I was just so mad on his behalf. So I actually can't tell if that's a plot issue or just me being mad, because Altair did not deserve that at all. So We Hunt the Flame ends with them knowing that they need to replace the 4 hearts they have, each one in each of the caliphates, and that they need to get the 5th heart from the Lion of the Night, and they need to rescue Altair. This is all incredibly time sensitive, which makes We Free the Stars really frustrating. So We Free the Stars starts off, and they're like, okay, we need to go rescue Altair. And then they don't, because they have other things they're trying to do. Which, fine, they only have so much time to get the hearts back to the caliphates before they shrivel up and die. But they're always like, oh dear, Altair, I hope that he's okay, but we're not gonna go get him right now. Even when it's revealed more and more and more that Altair is really the brains behind all of these operations. And Altair begins to get his own point of view chapters in which you see him really seeming to genuinely believe that the rest of the Zumra abandoned him. That's sad and weird, because Altair has never really been a negative character. He's always been excessively positive. To see him immediately jump into despair felt unnatural for his character, at least the immediacy of it. And then the plot gets really weird. There's a quest here and a quest there, and then they're all split up, and then they're over here. And so one of the things that happened in the first book is that Zafira ends up connected to the questy item they were after, the Jarwat, And it is this sentient, massively powerful book of power, essentially. And it starts to drive Zafira crazy to the point where she does some really horrific things, and then she thinks that Zumra's not going to love her anymore, and the really cohesive storyline of We Hunt the Flame really fractures in We Free the Stars. And it really just felt kind of messy. And this is an issue that I have a lot with the second book in the duology, is that so much setup has to happen in book 1, and then all of the finale has to happen in book 2. And I have yet to read a duology where that second book isn't trying to do too much. Like, I feel like there were whole plot points that could have gotten yacked out of that book just to make it a little bit cleaner and for me to be able to follow a more progressive storyline. What I love about this book is that it tries to handle so many storylines at once, because the world that has been created in the first book is so complicated. Like, I don't think you could write a different book than We Free the Stars just because of the world building that's, again, set up in the first book. But again, what I loved about the plot in the first book disappears in the second book. And it was weird, this weird juxtaposition of so much is happening, and yet I feel like nothing is happening. The chapter length in We Free the Stars is sometimes really short, like maybe even a page and a half. And so it ends up feeling like you're flipping pages really, really fast as you're like ping-ponging through all of the characters and their various plot lines. But in some cases, because all you get with them is like a scene, it's really hard to track exactly what's happening and when it's happening. Altair's character goes through like this rush of negativity, and then something that happens also just kind of felt like author intervention, and then it was like a ha-ha. And I was like, no, I don't believe that based on his character in the entire first book, but I just might love Altair too much. That's also possible. I loved what the second book was trying to do, but it was a real fight for me to finish it. It really was. And that made me really sad after reading We Hunt the Flame so quickly because of that incredibly progressive and expansive plot. I don't think that this book should have been a trilogy. I just think that for me, having read the amazing, like, more cohesive plot of the first book, I wanted that out of the second book. And there were just so many things happening, so many characters, so many plot lines, that was impossible. And for me, I'm not a huge, I wouldn't call it high fantasy, but I'm not a fan of that more fractured fantasy plot line. It doesn't work in my head. I don't follow it very well. And then with the short chapters too, for me, it was just too much to follow. And it ended up just making the reading experience not as fun as the first book. I'm glad that I finished it. I'm glad that I read it, and I would recommend it to other people. But like I said, is there really as much wrong with the second book as I think there is? I don't know. I don't know how to be fair anymore, because I haven't read a satisfying series in months. I've had issues with the final. Is it me? Am I cursed? I just want a conclusion that is as good as the first book, where the characters make decisions that make sense based on previous interactions. I don't think that that's difficult. And I don't know if it's just because I've been away from fantasy for so long. I don't know what it is, but it's driving me a little bit crazy. So yeah, maybe I just need to go read more romance or something. I don't know, guys. I'm gonna keep reading and keep my fingers crossed that I'm gonna be able to find something excellent, because I know they're out there, and maybe I need a different mindset, a different series. I don't know what it is, but it's out there, and it's gonna make me happy. And when I find it, I'll tell you about it. So, thanks guys. Bye.